worked with in the Caribbean and also around the region supporting governments in developing policies. And now I work at the University of the Bahamas as a professor. One of the things that I always tell my students is that climate change is having significant impacts not only in the Bahamas, but in all countries around the world. And as climate continues to change, one of the most greatest impacts that we see in the Bahamas is stronger hurricanes. And most times, we see a lot of persons getting involved in disasters, from governments to businesses, but most importantly, non-governmental organizations. So it's very normal to see all of these players involved in disasters. So the first thing I want to talk about is just climate change. Go ahead to that slide. Firstly, while we're sitting down here in this room, the Earth is undergoing natural processes. For example, we have a water cycle, we have a nitrogen cycle, and we have a carbon cycle, meaning that the Earth is recycling all of these molecules or elements, for example, carbon. So carbon dioxide is naturally found in our atmosphere because when we breathe in oxygen and we release what? Carbon dioxide. But the issue is that since 1950, when we saw the rise of what we call the Industrial Revolution, and countries like the United Kingdom and other European countries and America and New Zealand began to produce more with materials like coal and oil, they started to pollute our environment. And as they polluted in our environment, what happened is we started to get more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So this is a graph that shows us the amount of carbon dioxide in the from 1850, and if you notice, there's a big increase from 1950. So as time progressed, we're seeing more and more carbon dioxide increase in our atmosphere, and that has a lot to do with what we are doing as humans. For example, we're burning oil for electricity. When factories release pollution into the atmosphere, all of this stuff is causing an increase in carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is what we call a greenhouse gas. And a greenhouse gas is a substance that traps heat. So normally, heat is supposed to come from the sun and leave the Earth's surface. But the problem is, when we pollute our atmosphere, there's so much carbon dioxide that heat is unable to leave our atmosphere. And when that heat doesn't leave our atmosphere, we begin to see a rise in temperatures. We begin to see a rise in temperatures. So once again, focus on this time 1950. And you can see that there's a steady increase in the Earth's temperature since that period. Now, I want to show you a next video that simply explains the science behind climate change. So I'm summarizing what I say. It's a very simple video that I often use with my students. That's fine. So what this video is supposed to show us is that when we pollute into our atmosphere, that pollution traps heat. So the more carbon dioxide that we put in, the more methane, the more nitrous oxide we put into the atmosphere, or simply the more pollution we put into the atmosphere, heat is unable to leave our atmosphere. And it's constantly bouncing back and forth between those gases and the Earth's surface. And that is causing what we call global warming. Former President of the United States, Barack Obama, said that global warming is no longer some far-off problem. It's happening here and it's happening now. And as I mentioned, global warming is caused because of human activity. Now, who's at fault? You know, countries like the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos and other small developing countries, we contribute very little to pollution into our atmosphere. Most of the pollution in our atmosphere is by countries like China, United States, India, Germany, France, more developed countries. They're the ones who are actually producing most of the carbon dioxide, most of the pollution that is driving climate change. It's not our smaller countries. Now that we have a bit of an understanding of what climate change is and how climate change is caused, let's look at some of the consequences of climate change, meaning how do we know climate change is happening? The first one we're looking at is the loss of ice. So around various parts of the world, we have like the North Pole and the South Pole, and also in other colder climates, it's quite common for us to find ice. For example, I live in North Dakota, very northern state, United States, but snowed almost 8 months out of the year. Very cold places. So in some countries around the world, there's a lot of ice. In one in particular, the Alps in Europe has lost nearly 40% of its surface area because of warmer temperature. Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa has melted by more than 80% since 1912. The Sperry Glacier, which is the ice covering found in North America, has disappeared by more than 50% because of how hot the world is becoming. Let's look at the next slide. So I can show you an image. This is Mount Kilimanjaro in the early 1950s. But in 1999, you notice
No ice.
there's no ice covering on top of the mountain. And this is because of the earth, the heating of the earth because of climate change. The next point is sea level rise. Now, in the Bahamas, sometimes we don't understand sea level rise, but there's a particular country in the Pacific called Kiribati. It's a small island just like the Bahamas. And Kiribati is already experiencing the impacts of sea level rise. The government of Kiribati, they've begun to negotiate with other countries to buy land because they recognize that their country is being overtaken by seawater. So they're doing a lot of stuff trying to replant mangroves to get land back. But unfortunately, the sea levels continue to rise. Currently, sea levels are rising by as much as 1/7 of an inch every year. And the Florida Climate Center suggests that sea levels have risen around Florida by as much as 8 inches on neighbor since 1950. It is expected that sea levels will continue to rise if we continue to pollute our atmosphere the way we're doing. The next big impact of climate change is our ocean. The ocean is becoming more acidic because as we release carbon dioxide into our atmosphere, that carbon dioxide eventually mixes with seawater, and that's causing the ocean to become acidic and warmer. That acidification is causing us to lose coral cover. In the Caribbean region, countries like Jamaica, they're seeing a steep decline in coral cover. As much as one article said that as much as 80% of the Caribbean coral reef has been lost since 1950. And we know that corals are very important. The next critical impact of climate change is that we're seeing more intense hurricanes. And this is not just in the Bahamas, but this is around the world. In 2019, Hurricane Dorian was the strongest storm to impact the northwestern Bahamas with winds of 180 miles per hour. And I was in Grand Bahama at the time of Hurricane Dorian. And I can tell you, it was not a pleasant experience. You know, at that time, I was working with the West Grand Bahama District Emergency Operations Center. And 2 days before Hurricane Dorian, we were preparing for a Category 2 storm. And we went to sleep that night, and we woke up. The storm was a Category 5 hurricane. And we were preparing Grand Bahamians and Abaconians for different reasons. And the reason why storms like Hurricane Dorian are becoming stronger so quickly is because the ocean temperature is very, very warm. Let's look at the next slide. So this is the major hurricanes to impact the Bahamas over the last 15 years. From Francis, Jane, Wilma, Irene, Joaquin, Matthew, Irma, and Dorian. If we look, we realize that there's a trend increasing upward. That the storms, as they move through the Bahamas, are becoming more and more intense. I'll be transparent. The research is telling us that hurricanes will become stronger. But what we are not certain of is that the hurricanes will become more frequent. So we're certain that hurricanes are going to become more stronger, but we cannot tell you that hurricanes are going to become more frequent. Next slide. Now, if we look at this image here, this is 2 maps showing us the sea surface temperature, meaning the temperature of the ocean. This is the Bahamas here. If you look at the map, this is the Bahamas. And this area between Africa and the Caribbean Sea is what we call the main development region. If you look in 2005, this was the temperature of the main development region. And if we look at 2004, all that red represents the region is more, that main development region is becoming more warmer. It's very warm now, much warmer than it was 20 years ago because of climate change. Let's look at the next slide. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change is real. It's here. and it's happening now. Now, like I always like tell people, we're not helpless and hopeless. Even though we are experiencing climate change and we're seeing impacts of it around, there's some things that we can do about it. You can't just sit idly by and twiddle our thumbs. You must do something about it. So the first thing I want to talk about is what I do, what I know best, and that's disaster risk management. Next slide, please. What is disaster risk management? Very basically. I always tell people simply, disaster risk management is how we prepare for, mitigate against, respond to, and recover from disaster. We're looking at multiple things. We're looking at preparing. How you had activity earlier today with going through preparedness kit. That's an example of preparedness. Another critical thing in terms of disaster management is mitigation or addressing risk. How do we ensure that our physical infrastructure, meaning our homes, is hurricane-proof, for example? Do we have hurricane-proof windows? Is our homes elevated? When we talk about stuff like that, we're thinking about mitigation, how to reduce our risk. And also as individuals and households, we also get involved with disaster management when we have to respond to an event and when we have to recover from an event. And when we're preparing, I want us to remember this. When we prepare for disaster, we're preparing for our experiences after disaster. So we're preparing to recover from, or we're preparing to respond to a disaster. Now, next slide. One fundamental thing about disaster management is disaster management requires a whole community approach. Everyone must be involved in disaster management. Disaster management is not only the function of governments. I know a lot of times we like to blame the government for everything that goes wrong, but to be quite frank, disaster management is not only responsible of government. Government has a lot to do. I'm getting them off that quickly, but they're not the only person involved in disaster management. We are involved in disaster management. Non-governmental organizations are also involved in disaster management. The private sector, businesses, all of us involved in disaster management because we have an interest in it, what we could possibly lose, and we could also be impacted by disaster. So all of us must be involved. What I want to focus now, just for a very short while, is the role of non-governmental organizations like the Bahamas Red Cross Society and Rotary clubs. NGOs play a great role in disaster management. We do a lot of work. And it's very normal for NGOs to be involved. You know, sometimes when we see NGOs doing work, we assume that they're doing work and the government is doing nothing. But quite frankly, it's very normal. It's expected for NGOs to be involved in disasters because after disaster, humans tend to become very altruistic. We want to help, we want to give back. That's naturally what we do after disaster. So because of this pro-social behavior, helping behavior, we expect to see a lot of NGOs involved in disaster. What do NGOs do roughly? So what do we do? One, NGOs, they help to reduce mortality rate after disaster, meaning they help to reduce death because of the things that they do. Some NGOs, they provide food and water, which is basic needs. If you don't have food and water, you can't survive. Some NGOs are actually very specialized, like Doctors Without Borders. Samaritan Pursuit brings doctors, they bring doctors in to help the persons with disabilities and diseases after disaster. NGOs also have to reduce or minimize diseases and disability after disaster. Diseases because, for example, they provide communities like in Grand Bahama, they provide us with a lot of clean drinking water. So by doing that, they're helping to reduce disease and disability. They also assist with reconstruction and repair of homes, and they also protect displaced populations in shelters and whatnot. Let's look at the next slide. NGOs do a lot, from providing safe water. You'll even find some that are interested in animal care. Some are providing clothing. They even provide education. They are focused on human rights, microfinance, meaning that they sometimes give people cash grants that they assist in rebuilding your home. They do a lot of work in sanitation, sheltering, and some even do psychological counseling. So we see that NGOs are very key players in disasters. They're going to do a lot of work. And this is expected, this is normal. Because remember, disaster management requires a whole community approach. So, now, what is the Bahamas Red Cross Society? The Bahamas Red Cross Society has been around for many, many years. And our mission is to prevent and alleviate suffering wherever it may be found. And we do this work not only after disaster, but before. Like now, for example, Bahamas Red Cross Society has a very active Meals on Wheels program. They provide a lot of trainings and services. We want to protect health and ensure the respect of human being. We want to train personnel and encourage voluntary service. And we act as a channel for collecting money and goods for the general public, for those who may be sick and suffering. We are also guided by some principles. The Red Cross Society anywhere, no matter where it's Bahamas, Trinidad and Tobago, in India, we all have the same principles. And that the first one is neutrality, meaning that we don't take any sides. We're not associated with any political party. We always seek to maintain neutrality. We believe in independence, meaning that every local Red Cross society has the ability to operate independently and without any interference. We also believe in voluntary service. It is a belief that, that because there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we know that we can't afford to pay. Some of you in this room may be Red Cross volunteers, and it's impossible for us to be able to pay or give all of you some sort of stipend or compensation. So we would like to encourage voluntary service. We also believe in unity and universality. Next slide, please. What do I do with the Red Cross now? So I serve as the chairman of the Disaster Risk Management Committee. This is the first time the Red Cross Society has developed what they call the Disaster Management Committee. And the reason why we developed this committee is because what we experienced after 2019, the Hurricane Dorian. The committee meets monthly on a monthly basis. For the first time this year, we'll actually be meeting next week, Tuesday, where we'll be going over what we did last year and discussing plans for the upcoming year. The committee does a range of stuff, providing trainings on disaster assessment, to community plans, first aid. We do a lot of work. The main goal of the committee is trying to train us volunteers as much as possible and ensure that the society is ready for whenever we experience disaster. Next slide. In responding to a disaster, the Bahamas Red Cross Society will provide a variety of services. We will support shelter management, Ministry of Social Services. We will deploy damage assessment teams. We will support the distribution of food, ensure that vulnerable populations have access to safe places to live. And we also work closely with the government in the National Emergency Management, National Emergency Operations Center. Now, in terms of what we do in disaster recovery, next slide please, we ensure the reconstruction or rehabilitation of housing after Hurricane Dorian. Many persons in Grand Bahama and Abaco got assistance in terms of housing. We sometimes provide cash-based interventions, and in general, we support livelihood restoration. That is an overview of the Red Cross climate change and disaster management. One thing, if you don't leave here with anything, I want you to remember these two things. That global warming and climate change is real. It's here and it's happening now. A lot of people question that the climate change is, people, some scientists say that the Earth goes through these natural warming and cooling patterns. Because remember, we have to talk about the ice age when it gets very hot. That is very true, because the Earth naturally wobbles on its axis. But what is not consistent is the rate at which the world is warming. We've never seen this before in the Earth's history. The rate is warming very, very quickly. Second thing I want you to remember is that disaster management requires a whole community approach, meaning that it requires all of us in this room to get involved. It requires NGOs, it requires businesses, and also requires the private sector to be involved. That is the end of my presentation, and I'm more than open for questions that you may have.
Thank you for such an informative. I have a comment. The first thing you said, one of the things you came from a single parish family. And by the grace of God, I heard such a good understanding. So kudos to your mother. She did an excellent job. Because society never asks us the troublemakers and this and that and everything else. That's not who we really are, struggling to try to do the best we can with the things we have. And They say that our children are the ones that cause all this mess that is going on. But you are prime positive that that's not time exactly true. So I congratulate you on this. But I don't see the second thing I got was how important it is for the Minister of Environmental Health to do what he's supposed to do. Because these persons who are burning coal are contributing to what you just said. So I guess they should have been here. But I don't want to talk to you. But I mean,
Any other comments or questions?
Come to that telephone.
So we are sure of that they're going to get stronger because of how warmer the ocean is. But we are not sure if there are going to be more hurricanes in general. So we can't say that that we're going to see 30 or 40 hurricanes every year because we're not too sure about that. And Earth, is a lot of this is controlled by natural processes. So when you have a very strong hurricane, it actually absorbs a lot of energy from the Earth. So sometimes it's very difficult for the environment to generate another very strong hurricane afterwards. I'm not saying it's impossible, but we've seen it happen before. But because there's so much factors, we're not certain that there are going to be more hurricanes. But we know for certain that there are going to be more stronger hurricanes because the ocean is getting more.
You spoke about I can't remember the name of the island where the sea level is rising and they are looking at the means to mitigate the impact of the sea rising. You also mentioned Florida, where 8%,
8 inches.
8 inches. We are close to Florida. We are also a country that is experiencing rising sea level. Where are we in this whole phenomenon of sea rising, and how can we do anything to mitigate the impact of sea rising?
So that's a very good question. I think we do a lot of talking about climate change in this country. I don't think we do enough action. The Bahamas has miles, hundreds and hundreds of miles of coastline, from Grand Bahama to Nassau. And what most countries do, like for example in Barbados, you have something called the coastal zone management. Manage the coastline. The Bahamas, we don't have a unit of that magnitude yet. We have far more coastline than the country than Barbados. So I think the first thing that we need to do is seriously begin to invest in protecting our coastline. Because if we don't begin to protect, our coastline, when sea levels begin to rise, it's going to be easy for it to encroach. So we need to invest in more structural mitigated measures, like some maybe sea walls, flood walls, brines, embankments. Some of them are already on time. But also in some nature-based solutions, like replanting mangroves and ensuring that our coral reefs are strong so that we can so that we don't lose as much of our shoreline as possible. That's what we need to begin. Even in some countries around the world, it's illegal, it's against the law to build within a certain space from the coastline. We call those no-build zones. If you build in those areas, some instances it's illegal, you're not supposed to do it. If you build, they deny you services, electricity, or public water, and I think that is where we honest. The issue is the majority of our major communities are on the coastline. When I say that as someone who's grown up in farming, my father's from RCN. That's right there. Look at No Sound and Andros, So a lot of our map town and a lot of our major on the coastline. There have been a lot of people who've been talking about it, saying that the government is seriously some type of process. You know, I already,
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. You think of being outside. The only thing we can go on is but the carrying everything. But it's something. As I overboard. Will come for. Now we could. That's be ourselves, we see. Give Lord for. So we want to thank all of you for
And we really using coal. Are you saying that is factor? Is factor of the red tape?
They're gonna knock
So
it out.
that's cool, that's an example of coal. That is an example of coal, but the coal that I'm talking about is the coal that, for example, countries like India, they dig deep in the earth for that natural coal, and they burn that coal. Like, oh, in the Bahamas, we burn oil to generate electricity. In some countries around the world, it's very popular in Europe, and they still do it in India. They dig deep underneath the earth's surface for coal, which is a material that has a lot of carbon in it. So when it burns, it generates a lot of heat, and then they use that heat to generate electricity.
So that coal would be used like
It's different, it's the same, but in terms of contribution, climate change is negligible.
and you know, and I felt.
Oh, yeah, anytime you burn anything, yes, well,
excellent job of bringing this information to us. Now, I must say, China was a brave day that brought much awareness about climate change to the world. What is America and Europe planning to do? Because they are the ones who generate most of this. You know?
I mean, I've done a lot of work in international policy related to climate change, and the issue is it's a matter of money, economics. Those countries are not going to reduce to the amount that they need to reduce because it's going to be detrimental to their economy. So they don't care what happens in those countries. I mean, this is just my thought. Because in terms of the economic, if they were to, like, for example, reduce all of their pollution, the economic impact of their country is far greater. So they're thinking about their own needs, their own priorities. They're not thinking about what's happening around the world. And smaller, least developed countries.
All these activities by the time we sleep.
I just want to say, my grandchildren, my daughter-in-law, she has run. But I just want to say, anytime you hear about planting, please get on board. That's what we do. Well, I shouldn't say you're doing it done. Because I'm here now. But that's what we're doing it done. You're Hungarian, I'm a Hawaiian, and we do partner together to do these things. So when you hear Hungarian and Hawaiian doing something for the community, jump on board.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Very, very well presentation. Like how you are engaged. We will now have our second speaker. Now have our second speaker. Second speaker is Corporal Quanda. Is a committed public servant with 19 years dedicated service in the Royal Bahamas Police Force Fire Services branch. Throughout his career, he has honed advanced skill set, law enforcement, firefighting, offensive tactics, and emergency response, name a few, making him a well-rounded professional in public safety. Beyond his service in the force, Corporal Conduct has a strong background in electrical and is currently completing certified fire safety professional certification, further expanding his expertise in fire prevention and safety. A former member of Optimist International, he has always been passionate, uplifting, and protecting his community. As the owner of Illuminate Safety, he continues his mission of promoting fire safety and awareness in all spheres of society. Above all, he is a devoted husband and father, balancing his relationship with professional commitment, the family life, and community service. Please join me as welcome to Dr. Thomas.
Good morning.
The very same tactics that you use to work on others. We don't take. But I turn out you just do this. My class is pretty cool. Just have to talk to the way.
Thank you.
I didn't expect it. I was tasked with this on but today there is a lot of going on. It should already be done. So my ministry that I serve, it is Legacy Church and partnered with law enforcement. So the strategic planting on this stage because it's March that is highlighted staff that against cannabis violence, particularly this hospital. So yes, as far as women, yeah. And so this is the reason why I have that standing for that. It's not just about children. We live in a country where some this from contact. With that said, thank you for the concept. So you probably will find that some of our presentations, some of the information is actually going to pull out. And that's simply because so DRM simply is that's disaster response. Streamline fundamentally, it has the same structure. I'm the guy I'm the boot on the ground. I'm in the board meetings, making the plans. So when I do have to bring my, but when it comes to executing those things, yeah, I'm the guy who wants the team. We have a different perspective. While all views matter, I prefer this type of instances of you don't want to always have the environment, actually being a person, human being, a long time. Actually, right? But I grew up in a house. I'm an only child. Grew up with my mom. Still love my father, even though he's gone. So I'm the guy who's loving my father. I won't say much, but it is time now. When they do get started talking, however, sit down and have popcorn because I'm a long-winded bunch. I have a vast amount of training in my background. I actually prefer to keep it quiet simply because we are there. That's all. So, that's one of the main things that I find persons that we have to prepare for. Simply put, mental state. And it's fine. It's just what I am a person who accepts reality for what it is, regardless of how drastic it is. I live with a hope and I hope. And then I get others. That's it. I'm the guy who goes to that hole. Find somebody, even if they believe it, I would. Because, not because that person is there, it means that it matters to you. It matters to you. So because of that. So, you literally ran through the definition of it. So, simply put, we gotta understand the virus and how to manage them effectively. That's my job. Fire is one of my specialties, not limited to just fire alarms as well. The application there. I think there are persons who need to know it, and there are simply measures that we can put in place that can actually help mitigate against how natural disasters affect us. Firstly, what we need to things that may happen and how it works for us. You can defend and mitigate against that happens all before. Preparation, like I mentioned, is very important. So, you want to, let me read this here. You put it very simply as far as the definition of PR. So it's a systematic process of identifying, assessing, and reducing risks associated with disasters that involve strategies, policies, as mentioned, practices aimed at minimizing the impact of hazards on people, property, and the environment. People, property, and the environment. One of the bad things is mentioned executive protection, like so as a disaster happens, these are the things that actually happen are affected instantly within a matter of hours or even minutes. And then it takes time to rebuild back to any form of normalcy. It's not just replacing a home, so important. It's not just replacing a car. Persons can't do it. I admire your strength for those who actually can do any form of effect, directly or indirectly, or any other fire. One of my tasks also is serving.
Talk up, speak a little louder.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for that.
Project your voice.
Persons usually tell me when I start to show off loud, that I'm a bit too aggressive. So I literally put effort into trying to keep it calm, especially when I talk to children, because I know children in the room. The lot is there for a reason. Mom, can I ask a question? Is it possible, like, for one or two kids? At some point doing presentation? That's fine. Okay, good. So let's continue. So I won't go over that because he also, Dr. Johnson. Dr. Johnson already went through some of the 4 phases of the RCN. All right. Just so you have a hearing, prevention and mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. So, why is fire related? Regardless if it's somebody like a person or somebody actually doing the trash next door. Physical voice. And it actually destroys them. We can't destroy them. Remember what I said? You are full of environment. So long as those things have the potential of being destroyed, that's what we do. That's why there's someone that's smoking in the area, false. As also as far as exposure to deterrents like gas leaks, propane, you see we have a lot of that happening. All of these things are called hazards that we have to pay attention to. Truth be told, as far as LPG is concerned, in its natural state, it has no water. It's impossible to do that. So what you smell when there's a leak, that's an additive. So that won't be able to see. It amazes me how sometimes we actually ignore that. Just chop it up. What is the answer just for? Anybody ever heard that? Anybody ever said that before? That is true, right? That is one of the most dangerous times when it comes to LPG. If you can detect that, that's a problem. Turn it off immediately. Truth be told, about instances where we went to scenes about an explosion. It made the news. And the fella, when we get there, he's in the shower attempting to cool down. And his problem. And when we take a statement, all he did is, you reach home, you turn on the switch. Like we always do. And that was all it took for an explosion. So these are things that we have to pay attention to. You do not ignore what these beautiful senses tell us. Please don't. Take it very seriously. Common causes of fires are electrical cause, human error, and natural causes. In fact, and it impacts loss of life, property, and damage by highlighted that you'll hear that that's what you repeat it over again at its mandate. Right? Fire safe building materials. This is the part of prevention. Even if it's impossible for you to do a deep dive in building material, you need to pay attention to when you are building. Homes that are already built, ask questions. Look at ways that you ask for them for a project. Dr. Johnson just made the fact that it is confirmed that every year hurricanes get strong. And really, that's just what it is. That's something we directly catch. What you can't change is what you do as a result of that. What you do to protect you, your loved ones, and your home. And we have to take that proactive approach simply because it minimizes the effect that it has on you in your life. When you're in an airplane and they say, if there's a need for oxygen masks, or oxygen inside the airplane, that the mask drop down. They say, put on first. Traveling with the old person on track. You don't on the mask first. Then it comes in. It's going to be impossible for you to help someone else. You're not going to be. It's noble. But I love the verse that says, love others as you love yourself. Not at the cost. Remember that. So proper electrical wiring and maintenance. I have extensive background in electrical installation and there's something that is not that way. But we have to have an understanding that if something is wrong with that light switch, anybody ever had a light where just have to keep flipping it on and on and on and on and on
Yeah.
just to get it? Okay. That's not a small thing. That's saying that something is wrong. Or there's something wrong either in the light switch or in your ballast. The fluorescent light. Get somebody to check that. If nothing is wrong in the light, I guarantee you there's something wrong in the wiring. There's a concept called wiring in electrical theory. There's this milky, green, gooey substance that accumulates where you don't see it. And by the time it gets on the edge of the wires, where the wires are connected, or in the plug, that means it's already all through wherever that wire goes. That's a perfect recipe for catastrophe. And usually it happens, I know why. 1, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, when it's cold outside. Then you find that much heat to generate the cause you to spark up, and then I wake up and come back. Really? But this is how it happens. It's silent. And by the time as you know that there's a fire somewhere, you wake up and you can't breathe properly. Anyway, continue on that. Community break fire zones and uses as fire resistant construction codes. So, as far as government is concerned, the most we can do is agitate, in my opinion, unless we plan to sue. I have my mother-in-law, she's a hospital. Unfortunately, she's a.
Unfortunately.
I could already tell half your reaction. What I'm about to say, don't know. So I intentionally stayed out of saying anything. I show up. My wife, she does. She's nice looking. She's my mother-in-law only daughter, so she's primary. Yeah, they have the contact her. I show up. I visit everything on it. I was intentional in not saying anything. Last night it happened. Because I noticed all of the gaps and areas in which people ignore others and crack up. And so, and all of the history and breakdown of what had happened leading up to, she's been in a month now, leading up to where she is now. Watch her through. They're saying, oh, you talked to the sister in charge. My wife is explaining the whole history of what happened when she first came. So now, I said, I have a question. Who's managing the doctors? Like the doctor supervisor. Instantly, they were afraid. So, yeah, policies in place in this fine. Okay. I have the sister who's in charge of the ward, and I call the sister in charge of the hospital. I said, who's in charge? The doctors. Policy, work around. I know what it is, but I'm being led. Honestly, it's fine. We've already written the minister. I've gotten a call from whoever the doctor representative from the minister's office. I have a meeting on Tuesday. So yeah, my mother-in-law is there now. Who's in charge of the doctors? And in 10 minutes, Now I got a call from another very concerned dog, explaining her condition to the T. I said, Mom, I don't do drugs. However, make sure she, or at least you do your best. Because I'm not naive to think that you can do miracles. That's why I believe in God. But I need you to do your job. Everybody else, I do your best, needs to do. Because I'm sorry, I'm involved. They don't know how I have achieved. It's funny. They just know some people wanted who been here for a very long time. When you deal with people, like we'll be dealing with people, need this. You know, sympathize, be compassionate. Yeah. It's all talking. So, all remember, I'm going to say it again. Life, property, environment. It's the mandate. So, 5 minutes. So, we have to create a fire emergency plan. That's very important. You have to do that. You have to do that. You can call it a consult. You can dial 919 322 1225 804 302 8404. Sorry. Direct answers to fire control. Call. We have a section that I'm a part of, fire prevention section. This is what we do. Consultation free of charge. I have a company that does that, well, yes. I'm also a part of the training section as well. So if you need someone to sit down with, come up with a plan, because everybody doesn't know how to, then it can be done. You can call, your Grammy call, your sister call, I don't care. We have a full schedule, but somebody is going to make time to sit with you. Necessary. Most of the reasons why disasters and tragedy affect us the way they do it. Children can get involved. I think I can do it right now. It's about right. Can you send one of your brave children now? Yes.
Good morning.
I need to. Nice to meet you. You mind sitting under there for me, please? Just for that. That's fine. Thank you. So please take note of whoever guy is. Guy, right? I'm saying it right. Okay, good. So you will actually say that would look like a fire space, right?
We have a lot of it.
But a lot of it. Yeah. So this will simulate certain instances where you may have to go to survive. That's adults and children alike. This may be a hole that simulates where you may have to crawl. What's going to prepare you for moments like this is practice. Most of us may have those, we call it dawning windows, the 3 panes that open up like that. Okay, good. So you would think that I wouldn't be able to fit through a hole like that, right? have to practice. Evacuation plan that needs to be a part of it. There may be somewhere pretty high that you may have to go to survive. You don't need a mountain. But if some person who's been through the storm, you realize you may have to actually go on top of the roof. Because water was coming in force in some areas. So with that said, I need to mention something that people usually just look right over. That's topography. Topography on the property map simply just tells you how high where you are is above sea level or below sea level. That could give you an idea. You hear of a storm other than flash flooding in the United States. Listen, that's a different type of monster. Yeah. Be blessed in this region. Anyway, you hear of the possible storm surge coming in the description of whichever news broadcast here, Florida, wherever. Pay attention to that. Pull up that topography map there. Find out where you are situated on the map. And see how high you are above sea level. Add that times that by 2. Add that to where you are. Whatever flashes in your mind at the time, you paint that picture of what it possibly may be, believe that. Because subconsciously you just said to yourself, I need to back you. On the other end of the pendulum, if you higher up, I need you to focus on wind speed. Your building construction. Determine, you may not be able to determine, but consider, will these walls, how long they've been here, how they're poured, if this whole block was poured straight down, or what we love to do is read blocks empty and then read in columns. Because in Jamaica, they put steel straight down each block and they pour.
Yes.
Which could be a mitigating point to our government when we do look at changing policy as far as our building construction. Or use the culture. That and what they're doing now, putting fibers, which is equivalent to the same thing, but I still believe that conch shell is way more, because that's why China been buying up all these plastic conch shells. Get nervous now. No, seriously. What in China? No, they grind it out. And they put it in whatever product that they want to put it in to strengthen it. Literally what we're talking about right now.
He knows about it because a lot of the houses are
Yeah. And listen, you put a drill bit, diamond bit through that. You know, that's why that's so, yeah, that's why. Different roofing systems, you can look at that. So what it forces, what I believe is going to happen is they will eventually change our building, increase it, to strengthen it. Why? Because of what's happening with climate change and the hurricanes. All right, that's a reality. You get there. My only issue is, I like to move faster. My only issue is response time. Our nation usually is reactive. Something has to happen first on a catastrophic level, and then we, sit like that, put things in place. So it's on me. What do? Okay, I don't need the guy who comes in the lab, the guy who actually puts that in action to show. Because we need demonstration. That's just what it is. That's why Jesus had to come to show us how to do this. Anyway. So I went through the emergency contact numbers already. So definitely we have to identify escape routes. What's the two ways in or out of any building? Doors and windows. That's primary. Doors and windows. To the window and to the door. That's it. Other than that, in recent times, persons have to go to the roof. So you would have to have some form of understanding on how a roof is constructed. You know, just Google it or ask the doctor. And then say, show me. Once you see that, I'm telling you, see, all of this is preparation. When the time, if in the event that the time comes that you need to survive, oh, that's going to come up with that. Because you don't practice that. You don't gain this information. Don't just sit down on your hands. Practice. This half of us who just still growing younger, older. In shape. But anyway. So fire drills and training, yes, I mentioned that. Importance of regular drills. So fire extinguisher uses and evacuation procedures. So now the time to go through proper use of fire extinguisher. There are key things that you have to pay attention to. We use a pass acronym. PASS. Pull the pin. Looks like a grenade pin. Do not throw that fire extinguisher in the fire. You're allowed, but I've seen it. I've done training exercises where I went through in great detail proper use of a fire extinguisher. Classes of fire that you have to actually use these extinguishers on, extinguisher agents. Yes, we understand. In-class demonstration, good. Short video on seeing how it's done, yes, good. Go on the side to the physical. This fellow pulled up in it. What are you doing? This is not going to work that way. Class laugh. I say, stop laughing. This is serious. It means that you get how to do it. To an extent, like this. But I guarantee you, when you finish, you learn. So I have to, oh, you slow it, no? No. You keep them in class, don't do that. Don't do that. It's that serious. So if I have to stop, just for him, hold the class up and then continue, I can do that. So hold the pen, aim the nozzle, which is on the end of the hose. It's not all one thing. So you hold the nozzle and you aim that at the base of the pipe. That's where the problem is. The chemical reaction happening right there. But that's where you need to aim. You've seen it before, you know. Anybody ever like the salt before? Right above the burner, but at the base of the flame. You look in there, you can see it. It looks like on a hot day, you look all the way down the road. You see this looks distorted. Chemical reaction happening right there. It's happening. You distort that. Squeeze the operating lever and you swing side to side. You slow or fast. The fire has no way of surviving. You good? Yes. The extinguishing agent used is sodium bicarbonate, baking soda. Yeah, baking soda. That's all. All right.
How long is a fire extinguisher good for? Because you see, fire extinguishers and people put them for years and years and years and they never use it.
It depends on the size, 2.5 seconds. So we start from like 5 seconds and 15 seconds.
No, how many years?
How many years?
Yeah,
It all depends.
Building for years and years and it's never been used.
For last that long. Okay, so they have to be renewed. They have to be. So sodium bicarbonate sits, solidifies over time. So eventually it becomes liquid. It all depends on the carbonate in the fire extinguisher. Carbon dioxide, big, still full, it's good, and all of it. They have to check twice a year every 6 months. Supposed to. You do that, you have them for Just like that. Good. All right, so fire response strategies, I don't think, okay, for persons, life safety devices, smoke detectors, some form of fire alarm that automatically triggers off when the smoke detector goes off and you know, and you pull the alarm and alert everybody in the house or in the office, right? So evacuating safely. Emergency lights, light up a path of egress, the path that you're supposed to travel to get to safety. Systematic removal of persons from point of danger to point of safety. That includes if you can't see the fire, but you just see smoke and you can't see it all. Or like the baby in Garrett, that's where most of the oxygen is, right? So, but being going to role of fire departments, I mean, primarily I believe you guys understand what it is. That's why I went in late and what it is that I do. You have to focus on understand that you're going to sound like aliens. Apparatus everywhere, how you look. You could get disoriented based on the carcinogens that you can stick in, carbon dioxide is toxic area. So if you're going to look like and sound like alien, that's the person you run to, not the person you run from. You good? Yeah. Good. And response time. So understand when it comes to fire, time is of the essence. There are too much fires out there. Time is definitely of the essence. Don't think that you could go and pick up and get, no, you get out. Assessing damage and losses, that's the aftermath. What's also in the aftermath is actually not just considering insurance claim and all that thing like that, but our essentials. And Dr. Johnson went over that. What you did again, which is very good. I love that. It causes you to focus on what's important. That's how you get back to normalcy. You come first. And then we start to open up and branch out all these other things that make us comfortable but not necessarily comfortable. Right? So that's cleaning up debris, building homes and businesses, psychological support is what I want to focus on in this area. So this is where we come in also. You got to sit with somebody and talk. Because it ends up showing up physically. Heart palpitations, high blood pressure, we've been used to all of these things. It's from all unprocessed grief and trauma. Arguments, unforgiveness, all of these things. So you need to help. Good? All right. Now, I don't think if you go to the next slide. I think we spoke an example as far as Dorian is concerned. I don't think we need to go into that. So one of the main things that you need to, I don't think we have time for it, but people reach out to me and set up something. We have Dr. Gia Jones, one of our pastors, very, very most of my training. Person that she sent to report about that. To help line up something in order to get help or help, right? And then lessons learned from the incident. You have to focus on that because that's where our responsibility comes in. As victims also come from. So there's a portion of scripture that speaks that says that you taught me to trust at my mother's breast. The newborn baby has a responsibility, not just to be born and be killed as everybody else's job to help them grow up. The baby has a responsibility. The breast. The breast will be all day. Nurses sometimes have to help stimulate the child to know that that's their responsibility. They may even smack that. It's true. But we have a responsibility. All right? And so, conclusion, key is takeaway that this is fire risk is preventable. The proper planning, preparedness, and response save lives. Community involvement is crucial. I think most of that talk is covered. But again, it's repetitive, yeah, simply because this is here too our responsibility. Any questions? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you mentioned that, when you smell like, when, we normally say, if the gas is cool. You said, when you smell that, that's the problem. So that means, you should get someone to check that. Because in all those areas, after 3 months, when the gas tank gets low, you smell it.
So, you can even do a primary check yourself. Before you call someone, get some soap and water. Wherever the line is. Go down. You find it.
So what happens when it goes, the gas tank is full?
You still gonna
You
believe.
smell it.
You still gonna believe.
You already-
Yeah, you know, believe.
Yeah, but, you don't. You only smell it.
Because it's mostly fumes at that time. So gasoline in your car too is kind of similar, but it's a different molecular structure. The LPG is a different molecular structure. But mostly the fumes are with most of the issue. That's easier ignited. So when you smell it, then you know it's low, honestly, because we fill it up as soon as possible, or only use it if you don't have the means to actually fill it. When you actually use it, the stove. Sorry, this is the last.
I have my own fire detector everything, but I'm not sure. The fire is in my backyard last week, so I was thinking about it. It didn't damage my son, but it my trees in my yard. So in report, I was told that this a few years back. I didn't look very. They partnered with the fire station and they gave our fire. I just want to touch on the hospital. I work at the hospital. I was trying to advocate. When your family members in the hospital, in your loved ones, when things happen, my son is in the hospital, when he came over to the hospital, checked out. You couldn't get me out of the hospital. I stayed in silence. I didn't tell you exactly what to do. We need to do those things. So we don't talk here one with the other, don't get started. But what I want to say, we will take the law. Everybody to the hospital actually, like I said, me personally, I'm trying to advocate for a loved one to go and feed for loved one, because when those things go on the table, they feel the same way.
Yeah, that's what we do. That's what we do, actually. That's what we do.
You can do that, and go in and bathe them, so those things we will apply it. So we will pray that. My house is still damaged from dogs. Okay, but I'm here. I guess, I can't go there.
Thank you guys. I go, Sandra. Got the question on the same time. Okay, so our last week is actually on our last speaker is on Zoom. And they have our presentation for Mr. Adrian Sergeant, the managing director of the authority. So we just want to have a brief introduction of them by Derek Zeno. He'll present, and then he said you were fresh.
Mr. Aaron Sargent is an accomplished organization leader with over a decade of federal experience, managing and leading teams towards strategic business goals. His career is marked by an detail-oriented, transformative approach, fostering efficiency and nurturing positive workplace culture. His leadership aims to motivate staff to maximize their potential and drive significant organizational change. Mr. Sargent currently serves as the Managing Director of the Disaster Risk Management Authority, which oversees national disaster preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation efforts. Under his leadership, the authority is enhancing digital solutions for disaster management, strengthening interagency coordination, and modernizing national response frameworks. He is actively engaged in foreign strategic partnerships to improve national emergency response and disaster resilience. Prior to this role, he was the managing director of the Disaster Reconstruction Authority, where he spearheaded key initiatives such as the relaunch of the Abaco Hurricane Shelter and Community Center project, the restructuring of the Finance and Human Resources departments, and the relaunch of the homeowners assistance and repair program. Earlier in his career, Mr. Sargent served as a communication manager at the Hands for Hunger, a local nonprofit organization. During the COVID-19 lockdown, he played a pivotal role in reducing the organization's corporate grant, increasing donor engagement, and executing a virtual concert featuring top human added, significantly boosting fundraising efforts. He also held the position of the Assistant General Manager at the Bahamas Agricultural and Industrial Corporation, where he managed the public relations and information technology departments. He successfully rebranded the corporation, strengthened its social media presence, and led the development of its IT infrastructure. Mr. Sargent's leadership is characterized by strategic communication, analytical thinking, and effective project management. He is deeply committed to strengthening disaster resilience in the Bahamas and fostering collaboration among stakeholders to enhance national emergency response capabilities. Please clap your hands and welcome Mr. Sargent.
Good afternoon, the Road to the Rotary Club members of, can you hear me?
No.
Oh. Good afternoon, can you hear me now?
Can you speak now?
Can you hear me now? Good afternoon. Thank you for the warm invitation to speak at this webinar on disaster management in the context of climate change and weather-related threats. As the other panelists would have stated earlier, I join and celebrate International Water Day. Please forgive me, I would have wanted to be present. However, I am just returning from travel with regards to trying to help prepare and advance new and forge new collaborative efforts with some international partners regarding evacuation exercises in the Bahamas. And so please forgive me for my not being able to physically be present, but nonetheless, like I had said to the members of the executive team that we would like to support local like the Rotary Club of we could switch to the next slide, please. So disaster management in the context of climate change, and we can go to slide 3, which talks about the rising risk of climate change and extreme events.
Just hit the arrow. Just a second.
Are we to read what's on the board, or you're not listening to him anymore?
Real.
Yeah. They keep changing, so I say I don't.
This is how I felt.
You can go ahead.
All right. So as on the screen, I want to focus primarily on the rising risk and climate change and extreme hazards that affect the Bahamas. Later on in my presentation, I'll talk about the enactment of the Disaster Risk Management Act, which is a groundbreaking piece of legislation in the Caribbean region. But as we know, due to climate change, we will continue to see an increase in the number of Category 4 storms. In the Caribbean region alone, we can already see an increase in the extreme weather events like hurricanes with very strong winds. 2 weeks ago, I was in Barbados at the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency's after action review about Hurricane Beryl and the events of last year when it comes to weather-related events. And we can see all around us, the geopolitical climate is talking about, especially in the region, is highlighting the facts that we have to be more prepared. We have to coalesce in terms of and collaborate in terms of regional efforts, preparedness efforts for disaster management. Climate change has been linked to the sea level rise, as we heard in earlier presentations, which then leads to higher storm surges. Storm surge are often the most dangerous part of hurricanes, as these surges, which can go past 20 feet, can cause immense destruction and loss of life. As the global temperature increases, we can expect the more significant amounts of rain during the rainy seasons and accompanying hurricanes. This contributes to the extreme flooding and exacerbates storm surge. Next slide, please. Go back one, which is Dorian, climate change. Yes, thank you. Hurricane Dorian was the first time we markedly experienced and acknowledged the impacts of climate change. The country and the world could not ignore the impact that climate change was having on small island developing states like the Bahamas. Hurricane Dorian demonstrated how a hurricane could intensify rapidly and produce storm surges of 30 feet or more. There's a potential for a Dorian to happen every year, whether we would like to believe it or not. There is that potential, but it is more than likely a one-off event, 1 in 50, 1 in 100-year storm. But Hurricane Dorian represents the baseline going forward of the types of hurricanes we can expect to see in the future due to climate change, very strong winds, very high storm surge, heavy rainfall, and rapid intensification. Hurricanes are only one way that we can expect to feel the impacts of climate change, as it is evident as we needed to evolve our disaster management strategies. Proactivity and planning encourages us to have more stronger and robust planning at all levels for the considerations of vulnerable populations and family islands in particular. Updating long-term systems such as shelter maintenance and management is something that the DRM authority is keen on doing, and ensuring that when you vote the approved shelter listing, you understand what type of shelter what's the capacity, providing with our residents with all of the information necessary to make an informed decision as to where they are to evacuate to. It requires cross-sector coordination, integration and coordination across sectors, including non-governmental agencies, is central to rapid action, identifying and mobilizing large scales of aid, and helping people in communities restore their lives and activities. It requires ready and sustainable funding, swift and readily available funding in crucial times of disaster, as is best achieved by sustainable funding mechanisms and the ability to quickly and safely work with potential funders. The Disaster Risk Management Act is a great start in recognizing and addressing these challenges. Next slide, please. And you can go to the next one, the objectives of the Act. So the objectives of the Act is to develop and implement a comprehensive, inclusive, and proactive disaster management approach to natural hazards. It focuses on reducing risk versus in the past, the legislation would have focused on disaster emergency response mechanisms. But the focus of this piece of legislation is to reduce the risk before a natural hazard occurs. So it involves the reducing of risk of loss of life, health, physical integrity, economic disruption, and environmental damage. This is the first time that in our country's history, that disaster risk reduction is being given this level of focus. It prioritizes the protection of vulnerable populations due to age. It promotes the involvement, and for the first time in legislation, it writes in the promotion of including all relevant sectors, including agencies and NGOs such as yourselves in the disaster risk management cycle at all levels. And it also mandates the creation of a national disaster risk management policy, which we are in the process of developing. Next slide, please. So it is the disaster risk management policy. The frameworks and instruments include a more robust disaster risk management and planning. It requires us to implement and produce and publicize a national disaster risk management plan and disaster emergency plan, as well as through administrators, family island administrators, to develop what we call public and local body plans of disaster risk management and emergency management for their areas. It requires financial planning and sustainability. We most recently just went through an exercise with the IDB it's a budget tagging exercise, which would tag public expenditure that help to reduce risk in terms of disaster. And also we have, for the first time, been empowered to create the disaster prevention and emergency funds. We are in the final stages of the first iteration of those funds, and hopefully those should be seeded and populated by this upcoming hurricane cycle. The disaster risk management policy also pushes for the development of national disaster protocols, standardized procedures that guides entities and the public through all stages of the disaster. The development of the national humanitarian assistance standards, WASH, health and supply distribution and shelter management. That national humanitarian assistance standards we have already developed. We are in the final stages of production to produce and publicize to the general public. And lastly, the National Non-Governmental Council, which is enshrined in the authority, is mandated to establish this council, which I would speak to more at the ending part of my presentation to you. Next slide, please. So the Disaster Risk Management Authority is the official national disaster management agency of the Bahamas, and is the primary instrument of the Disaster Risk Management Act. Next slide. So, and I wish I was present to ask how many of you know who, I'm pretty sure many of us know who the individual is on the left of your screen, which is Usain Bolt, the world's greatest sprinter. Does anybody know who is the individual on the right? Yes, he is the world's most decorated, and his name is Eliud Kipchoge, and the world's most decorated marathon runner. And Again, our thought process is that in the past, and building on the success and some of the foundations that our predecessors, including, and I have to shout out my predecessor, Captain Stephen Russell, who is now a senior advisor to myself in the DRM Authority, has laid an extensive foundation from the response components of disaster management. But we find ourselves in a new terrain regarding disaster. Sorry. Regarding disaster risk management. And so we figure through the legislation, the DRM authority is set up and requires a marathon mindset as it relates to how we manage disaster risk and reducing risk to ensure that we save lives. Next slide. So the DRM authority was formed or enacted in April of 2024. Our boards were appointed on May 15th of 2024. And in that same year, which is July 1, we would have operationalized the operations of the DRM authority, which was in the midst of a very active hurricane cycle. I would be remiss if I don't give thanks to our Minister, the Honorable Leon Lundy, who pressed for the authority to be operationalized. And as I stated earlier, Captain Russell continues to be involved as an advisor to both the authority and our ministry. Next slide. So many may ask, what's the purpose of the DRM authority? Our purpose and our vision is a nation of islands, communities, and families safe, secure, and strong against all natural hazards. Our mission is to save lives and safeguard our nation's future by uniting and empowering communities against all natural hazards through comprehensive disaster management. Next slide. Our approach is broken down into four main themes. Holistic, we are comprehensive and inclusive in disaster management. The philosophies of the DRM authority is rooted in SEDIMA's comprehensive disaster management model. SEDIMA again represents the regional body that manages disaster management for CARICOM, and it covers all phases of the disaster cycle. It promotes a whole of country, whole of community approach, bringing together partners across all sectors. It is proactive in terms of preventing loss or protecting futures. Greater focus on mitigation, emphasizing preventative action and planning, and going beyond disaster emergency plans to include disaster risk in all public and local body plans. We empowered, the authority is an independent authority to be able to connect and collaborate with stronger external agencies and partners. Authority with greater autonomy and agility, less dependence on central government for funding. So we have the ability to write a number of grants. One of them we was just successfully able to finalize with the Caribbean Development Bank, which is a $750,000 grant agreement to allow the country to develop the first of its kind mass evacuation plan for New Providence, as well as various family islands that will guide the way that we mass evacuate. These are the things now that we have to start to consider with the natural hazard threats and the levels and the intensification rising. The last component of our approach is it's innovative, smart solutions for safer Bahamas. Most recently, I attended the Disaster Expo in Miami, Florida earlier this week. And one of the big focuses from my end is how can we leverage technology such as AI to help us identify risk early ahead of time, being able to communicate faster. We often don't have the resources. And if you think about it, the Bahamas is an archipelagic nation. If you were to put all of our inhabited landmass together, we are bigger than Jamaica. So resources are thin. And so how can we leverage technology to close some of those gaps and build stronger disaster management protocols? Next slide. So today it leads to you may be asking today, well, what is your role and what does that involve? For us, the thought process is an opportunity to develop a safe, secure, and strong Bahamas that involves all of us. Next slide. So your role is critical. The Disaster Risk Management Authority is actively looking to involve the NGO sector in disaster management through the following and adherence of national humanitarian standards, the establishment of the non-governmental consultative council, NGO and civil society engagement, and volunteer programs. We are expanding a number of our trainings to include NGOs in terms of shelter management training, disaster management training, involving NGOs from the standpoint of into our disaster operations. And so we're looking to include civil society in a lot of the work that we do. Next slide. So the DRM Act calls for, and our organization has been tasked with developing emergency shelter policies and programs in collaboration with relevant government agencies and stakeholders like the Ministry of Health. We are also responsible for establishing the National Humanitarian Standard, as you can see on the screen, that provide the minimum standards that must be met by the government and all humanitarian aid organizations providing emergency shelter services to those who may require them. Next slide. The National Humanitarian Standards. These are standards that regulate and improve the level of services and care provided in the aftermath of a disaster. So they're developed in consultation with stakeholders across the country from various sectors. They're created through a thorough process which took a little over a year, and they're based on the International Sphere Handbook of Humanitarian Standards and modified to fit the Bahamian context. The standards were finalized about a month ago, and rollout and training of the community is scheduled to begin soon. Representatives from Rotary will be invited to attend and be a part of the training initiatives. Next slide. As I alluded to earlier, the DRM Act calls for the establishment of a non-governmental consultation council, and the consultation council, NGCC as we call it, is to consist of persons selected from various backgrounds with qualifications and skills that include the management of disaster risks, community-based organizations, nonprofit organizations, and private organizations that will help the DRM authority in the management of disaster risk. We are in the final stages of a consultancy with the Inter-American Development Bank to finalize the how we form this authority, this council, and how and we anticipate that this council is slated to commence their first set of meetings before the hurricane cycle that will occur in June. Next slide. Other ways that we are working with the nonprofit sector, NGO and civic organization engagement. The DRM wants to involve the NGO community in all phases of the disaster management cycle. So that's mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. We value and need NGO partnerships in blue sky times, just as much as we do in gray sky times. Invitations will be sent out to all of the NGOs for our very first NGO meeting. NGO and volunteer registries. The DRM will build and maintain a registry of NGO partners and volunteer database for activation and swift mobilization before, during, and after a disaster event. And so with that being said, I will bring my presentation to a close. I'm open for any questions that you may have.
Hi, this is Chantel. You'll need to unmute the mic in the room so that we can hear you in the room.
Okay.
Hello? Hello? Oh.
Any questions online?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Great presentation, sir. I'm not sure if I missed it, and so please excuse me if I did. Would you mind confirming the date when you will be reaching out to NGOs to be able to partner with the upcoming initiative, please, that you mentioned?
So I didn't provide a date. My teams will be reaching out to all NGO entities within the Bahamas. Two, one, be a part of the National Non-Governmental Consultative Council. And then once that is operationalized, we would then be seeking to meet with NGOs and their reps more frequently ahead of the hurricane cycle. So I would say stay tuned. We have your contacts. I believe we have the contacts of your president and your DRM rep. Let me just. So we are working towards a date, and so the person who's responsible for NGO relations is online with us, and I will ask her to just drop her email and contact into the chat so that you'll be able to have her contact, and we will advise on the date going forward. I believe
Okay.
he's advising me it's March 27th. We are working towards that.
Awesome. Thank you. Continue the great body of work that you're doing. Great job.
Thank you.
All right, so we now
Okay, teacher, a round of applause.
We want to be very quick. We're now wrapping up, so we're just going to go quick trivia. So we just need about 3 people, or just one person, the first person, and we need both our presenters just to confirm the information for us. If the first person who can tell us a point from each of the presenter that they've learned today. So we just need both of the presenters to confirm the information. So anyone that want to raise their hand quickly, we have a little gift for you. Who raised their hand first?
Right there. Right there.
In the back?
Yes. Yes.
The first one. The first one? Okay, let's go with you.
From Dr. Trevor Johnson, I've learned that we are at risk, that our sea levels are rising, and we as a community have to take part in when it comes to disaster relief, and there's no stipend to help, for everybody to get, but we as a community have to help the community to regain, restructure, and rebuild. From the gentleman right there, Mr. Conlon, Officer Conlon, I learned that fire extinguisher. When you put the spray from side to side, you do not actually throw it because it's going to
Sergeant?
And the last speaker?
Oh, each one, okay. The gentleman from DRM. I learned that they just got established in July. They actually was operationalized July the 1st, 2024.
Paying attention. And then the part.
Closing remarks. Presentation.
That's pretty good. Okay.
Information on, did you get some information there? they say, let me come in more stronger.
What she said?
So we got to be prepared for much more. That gets caught in a punch down against it. Okay, but yeah, we come now to just really make a meeting, that is to present you with at least the tools, at least to begin the preparation, okay, for disaster in case there's a disaster here. And so I will let that, I'm going to call you by your constituency office. Again, he will help us with that. Go to you.
Presentation. So, for Bain and Grantstown, Dawn Brennan. She's ill. Okay.
Someone gonna second on the behalf? This is court.
Patsy Cooper. Oh, okay. So I just have to get constant portable radios. Blanket. Blanket. Also lantern. Dave Russell. This is very bad. Janice Copley, Dolores Sinclair. From where?
I love you, Monique.
Where's Jamie?
Senator Stephanie Colo. Okay, and Constello Fernandez.
Which area? Which area? Yeah. Yeah.
Douglas said Melanie Hepburn and Pauline Taylor. Fox Hill, Carolyn Barr, Tina Curry.
Yeah.
Freetown, Characito Pinder, Rachel Smith. What Charlotte, Deborah Allen, and Janet Conquest. Marathon Harris Ethel and Elaine Butler. So Village, Charlene Flowers, and Arnett Almanor. Pinewood Gardens, Sandra Morse, Eleanor Wilkinson, and Melanie Boney. Yamacross, Sharon Reckley, and Eugenia Lowe. Do we have anyone here from any constituency that was not given a ride?
I think they.
Yep.
I'm not sure.
Child, I said, Lord.
You find that right there.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we'd like to ask the director of urban renewal, Stephen Bain, to make a presentation as well, just to say something. I'm quite sure he has something to say.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
With such negative positive effect of this gives me a special spot and comfort to know that one's not lost. We have corporate organizations out there, civil society, and this club, like Rotary Club of Nassau, you know, I bet too hot. Man, the record was reviewed. The Rotary Club of Nassau also members, president. This is a good combination. I like the Rotary Club of Nassau. Government building ain't going nowhere, so we love to receive gifts. So next year we'll get gifts. But this is a good gift. Not only a Christmas time, but we give gifts. You know, so it's a positive effect. I want to thank them and I'll send some because Lily Longley.
Yes.
Yeah, she was that director who coordinates, and I want to Santa Monica kids. Santa Monica. So these people who so we really want to send them a quick book read. We really appreciate this. And it's a long way to the residents, sacrifice the time they want to come. We will be doing some more stuff, you know, both entities together. So, Mr. President, I thought it was good. Yeah. At the end of the day, I will sit out and present the next presentation. Like an invisible date that we got on Fire Branch, to speak of all of our staff and everybody coming up with the fire station. We brought a lot of attendance and we had an hands and eyes in the community. We also look at the partnership and during that time when you come, you bring some smoke detectors. I just put them on it. In your hand.
Disaster chair. And let's give a round of applause for Jerry the Teal. Assisted by Jerry Donnie. Let's give it to them. Come to the front here. All the Rotarians come to the front. These are the people that make it happen, ladies and gentlemen. They make it happen. They make it happen. And they're so happy that all of them were able to put their shoulders to the wheel. And I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this is our second exercise in giving out hurricane preparedness kits to urban and rural people. First, all together we would have given out, that's over 70, 80 kits. So we want to thank our corporate partners. And that's what we do so Rotarians. Go to the corporate community and they sponsor events like this. So we get so happy that we're able to partnership with those corporate entities and then bring relief to you. Okay? So we want to say thank you, particularly she's in here, but Rotarian Cassidy, she was spearheading our fundraising effort that we had, and they want to be driving for us and making this all happen today. So let's give her a round of applause. And while we still here, okay, while we still here, you want to go another photo? Okay, let's take another photo, my dear. See everyone. But we'd like to call Corporal Conlifton, he's here.
Participation. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Give you a little lunch before you leave, but if we can we have a closing prayer by
Okay.
a group photo with the participants before you leave. We would appreciate it, but we also have a lifeline for you. Yes. Can we have a closing prayer?
Father, we just give you thanks for this moment to reflect, but also to focus, also to give thanks. Everything that we have been given, Father, is from you. So, Father, we thank you for the families that are here that represent so many others who were affected by storms, the tragedies in the past. Father, we pray your protection on them over this wonderful country we call the Bahamas. We ask, God, that you will continue to strengthen the persons not only in this boat, in our country, strengthening those who put their hands to the wheel, especially in the organization of. We ask, Father, that you will bless the food that we are about to receive. We have nourished our bodies, that we can advance your kingdom to others. Father, we will always give you thanks for what you continue to do in the lives of persons from not only urban renewal, Rotary, and the general public. Give you thanks. In the name of your son, Jesus, people. We're gonna go outside. Just to take a
You open the door to Bob. Let's move quickly. Let's get the photo and let's come back in. On the grass, come on.
What are you doing? What I'm doing? What happens with Chivas?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day.